Last December, I was dropping off my girlfriend at her place. It was snowing pretty hard, so the roads were a mess. Big flakes were falling, and they reflected enough moonlight that even though it was dark, you could still see everything pretty well. Kind of the way nighttime looks in movies. We were in the middle of a conversation when we pulled up that had started off pretty light, but somehow had gotten fairly serious. She was telling me about her dad. We'd been dating for a while, so I knew her dad had left, but she'd never told me all the details. After she finished, we sat there for a few seconds in comfortable silence. She's a girl with a lot of idiosyncrasies, and all of them are terribly attractive. But my favorite by far is the way her face usually gives away exactly what she's thinking. I could tell she had something more to say. So I waited. After a few more seconds, she looked at me and used my name, told me that I was the first guy she'd allowed herself to trust after her dad left. That's what she said, and she meant it, I could tell. My gut reaction was to say thank you, but that seemed so thin. Everything else that came to mind after that seemed thin too. Before I turned to walk away, I saw a single snowflake land softly on the lapel of her black coat. I could see it clearly enough to make out the miniature legs of ice webbed together in a jagged six-legged star. It only sat there for a few seconds, and then it melted. They say that people are like snowflakes. No two are exactly alike. We've all heard it before because it's a cliche, and well, you don't become a cliche without getting around a bit. I've been told that a good writer should avoid these because they're empty phrases. Everyone knows them, everyone uses them, but no one really thinks about them. In most cases, I'm right there along with everyone. But not this one. I spent a lot of time thinking about this one. Something about that night, that conversation, and that snowflake just pulled at me. It was one of those moments when you feel like you're learning something so big that it almost feels like you're relearning it. Like it had always been there, but you forgot it for a while. Experts estimate that 1 million billion cubic feet of snow falls on the Earth every year. Of that million billion, 0.00563% falls in a town like mine. They also estimate that 1 cubic foot of snow contains roughly 1 billion snowflakes. That means that 56 quintillion new snowflakes arrive in my town every single year. Now that number doesn't mean anything to me, so I like to think of it this way. If all of those snowflakes were transformed into dollars and sent to India, then every man, woman, and child in that country would be as rich as Bill Gates. I also found out that snowflakes can be extremely dangerous when you get a bunch of them together. 100 years ago, for example, a bunch of snowflakes got together in the Cascades and raced down the mountain at the same time. I don't know which one of them started it, and most of them were probably just following the crowd. But I do know that by the end of their little movement, they'd pushed 6 rail cars off of tracks at the base of the slope and over a cliff. There were 96 people in those rail cars, and the snow killed them all. Big groups of snowflakes are capable of more than just holocaust and disaster, though. One example comes from Utah, where I was raised. Every year, a lot of snowflakes join up, melt down, and run off into streams, rivers, and reservoirs, where they combine to produce the 2.6 trillion gallons of water that make the whole state inhabitable. Some flakes contribute more than others, but anyone that pitches in makes a difference. A little help from a lot of individuals can save an entire community. All individual snowflakes come from the same place. Water vapor condenses on dust particles and then freezes. Some are 1/10 of a millimeter wide, and some can get as big as 2 inches. And it's only a few degrees Fahrenheit at the time they form that make the difference. Experts use microscopes to look at these differences and then classify and categorize all of these snowflakes with terms like simple prisms, stellar plates, bullet rosettes, or radiating dendrites, because supposedly it makes them easier to understand. It isn't always simple, though. Studying snowflakes can be a tricky process that takes a lot of patience because some snowflakes don't form all the way, some develop in unexpected ways, some get stuck together, and none of them last forever. Getting a good look at individual snowflakes and appreciating them for all they're worth just isn't something that happens every day. I tried to explain all of this to my girlfriend when she got back from her sister's. I think initially she figured I just had too much free time, because at first I didn't make a whole lot of sense. thinking a thing and saying it are two very different projects, and none of it was coming out right. I started in on my snow facts, but somehow managed to get into talking about her and us. I asked her if she remembered when we met at Gavin's party. She said yes, but she said it kind of like she was asking a question, like she was suspicious. Then I asked if she remembered that we didn't end up going on a date until about 3 months after that party, because even though we both thought the other seemed nice, we didn't really hit it off immediately. But then we ended up next to each other in that long line at the bookstore, and after 20 minutes of talking, we were a lot more interested than we had been on that first night. She remembered that too. I brought up our first date, when we picked up some canvases and acrylic paint and went back to my place. My painting sucked, hers was okay, but the date was awesome. Her smile killed me. I remembered that more than anything. I talked about the time we went ice skating, how it still bothered me that she was a better ice skater than I was. She loved that. I gave her a hard time for crying during the first, second, and fifth movies we watched together. She said I couldn't blame her on the second one. I agreed. That movie is so sad. And then I reminded her of that night on her porch, just a handful of days previous. The night she told me about her dad and the night the snowflake landed on her coat. I mentioned the cliche, people are like snowflakes, no two are exactly alike. That I conceded that it was true, but only when you look really, really close. If you aren't looking closely, it all pretty much looks the same. Some ends up on the road, some on the top of the mountain, and some ends up in a crusty pile in the corner of the grocery store parking lot. But every snowflake fits into some group or another, and they almost always just blend together. To really appreciate a snowflake, you have to see it up close. And to see a snowflake like that takes a lot of work, a little luck, or usually both. I explained that even though this discussion started with snow, it probably wasn't really about snow at all. It was about her and me and us and every other person sprinkled over this gigantic planet, and how we're all snowflakes. And it's fine that we usually just blend into the mass, but it's nice to catch an occasional glimpse of individuality. And it's probably important in some way, too. She got it. I could tell she got it. She probably had it figured out well before I finished rambling, because she usually understands stuff like this. When I finally stopped talking, we sat for a few seconds in comfortable silence. And she reached over, grabbed my hand, and smiled. Her smile kills me.